Welcome back to The Explainer. Tonight, we're pleased to be speaking with Senior Counsel Charles Kanjama, who's the President-elect of the Law Society of Kenya, set to take office officially at the end of this month. Thank you so much for being with us here on the program tonight. And
thank you for inviting me.
First, congratulations on your election. Let's talk about how that went. So LSK members in an election of 3 candidates elect you, Charles Kanjama. What are they saying and what are they looking for?
Of course, each of the 3 candidates had a persuasive manifesto, and all of us had to try and sell our manifesto to members. And each of us had the track record that we were relying on. And elections is about both your manifesto, your plans, and your track record. What have you done? And therefore, can members have confidence in you that you'll deliver on your track record? And for me, my track record was anchored on 4 pillars. I said that Section 4 of the Law Society of Kenya Act, which has 14 functions, can be summarized into 4 pillars. One is rule of law. This is outward facing. LSK has to champion the rule of law for the benefit of all Kenyans. The second was integrity and independence. This is both outward and inward facing. In the legal practice space, we need to have integrity in the courts, in the commercial registries, within practicing lawyers, so integrity in the bar and the bench. And the Law Society of Kenya is strong, as well as the judiciary, because they have independence that supports that integrity. So integrity and independence is the second pillar for the Law Society of Kenya and for my manifesto. The third was issues of practice and welfare, because the Law Society of Kenya is a professional body or association for lawyers. It has to take care of their interests. And the approach I had was that for LSK and for lawyers to be strong and have dignity as professionals to serve the public, we need to take care of the interests of the lawyers themselves so that they can be empowered and have the dignity so that they can serve the public effectively. So that was my third pillar. And the fourth was that the Law Society of Kenya needs to be an organ that is very engaged in dealing with members in general, in our various structures like branches and chapters, and also with stakeholders. So engagement was my fourth pillar. And I think the members were happy with that manifesto, and they felt that they should give me the mandate so that I can implement that agenda.
So for a body of more than 26,000 members, and correct me if I'm wrong, about 18,000 are active out of that?
Yes, 18,000 have taken out a practicing certificate. So those are the active members.
Right.
27,000 are the ones who have ever become advocates of the High Court.
I see.
Some are since deceased, some are in the judiciary, some are state council who don't take out practicing certificates, and some have just moved on to other affairs.
Right. So for 18,000 who are active, why would only 8,600 participate in the elections? What do you think that says? Is there some type of apathy? Have they lost faith in the society? Is it some form of fatigue in the society?
So that was about 46.6% voter turnout. When you look at the trend of LSK elections, the last several elections, the voter turnout has been around the 50% mark. Sometimes it's below 50%, sometimes it touches 50%. So there are a number of reasons for that. And this include, of course, the fact that we vote on a working day. Some lawyers are not in that particular place where they are meant to vote. They have traveled to other stations. We also have a bit of apathy, it's true, and a bit of disconnectedness by some of our members who may not feel that they necessarily need to be the ones voting for LSK to serve their interests. And that is why, for me, one of my key manifesto policies or principles was a strong LSK for all. Because I feel that LSK needs to be able to demonstrate to all its members, those who are in-house lawyers, and sometimes feel LSK is focusing on private practitioners, and those who are private practitioners, those who are young lawyers, those who are senior lawyers, all of them, those who are based in Nairobi, those who are based in other parts of the country, all of them need to feel that LSK is able to take care of their interests. So that is part of what I want to accomplish. But I also think we need to relook at our voting system. And many lawyers have said that we need to find a system that is more kind of like efficient and convenient for members. And when I was chairing the Nairobi branch of the Law Society, which has about 75% of all lawyers, we introduced electronic voting for elections of Nairobi branch. But in the case of the national office, we still do the ones where you have to travel, sometimes distances to vote. And so we'll have to explore whether another system of election will increase voter turnout while still being free, fair, accountable, and verifiable.
Now, you're replacing a president who cultivated an image of a hands-on leader, as demonstrated by her presence during the Gen Z demos and abductions. She was literally in every police station, assisting those who'd been arrested or those who were looking for those abducted. Do you think that this, pun intended, raises the bar for you?
Definitely. We say that we are pygmies standing on the shoulders of giants. And all the previous LSK presidents and leadership have set a bar in one area or the other. And when you come into office, you must start by recognizing the great things that have been done by your predecessors and see how to keep the tone where they have left it and also raise it beyond where they have left it, even as they raised the level beyond where they found it. So that is clearly a bar that has been set. But for me, one of the things that I'd like to do is to bring in the entire Law Society of Kenya leadership and lawyers so that they are all championing issues of public interest litigation. And that LSK is not just the president, but the president is working, the council members are working, the committees, including the Public Interest Litigation Committee, the Public Interest Litigation lawyers, and all lawyers. So I want there to be a growth in the capacity of lawyers to engage in public interest litigation and to support the public in these situations where rule of law has been threatened, human rights have been violated, and so on.
In a recent exchange on X, formerly known as Twitter, there was one user, Mwabili Magodi 2, on the 28th of February, who congratulated you on your win as LSK president, but also said, kindly note that Menelik is abducted by DCI. His whereabouts are unknown. Last seen at Muthaiga police station, asking you to changamka. You then replied that as LSK president-elect, what I can do is advise. Nikishika mamlaka nitaweza pia kutekeleza. And you gave a list of what to do. 1, report to DCI. 2, notify media. 3, engage human rights organizations, including the Law Society of Kenya. Help us understand, Senior Counsel, what are your limitations currently before being sworn in? Because as an advocate and a senior counsel, what is it that you cannot do right now about a case such as this?
I think the question is, how does LSK operate? LSK operates under the leadership of the President of the Law Society of Kenya. The President does not work alone. They work with the Council, they work with the Secretariat of the Law Society. They are served by various committees, including the Public Interest Litigation Committee, the Public Interest Litigation Directorate. They have networks where they connect with the police. There's a Lawyer-Police Relations Committee. They have partnerships with other human rights organizations. So whenever you see LSK leadership engaging in something, it's not one person. It's a system and a network, but the one person may be the one in leadership. We don't believe in things being done by one person alone, because one person cannot do too much. So that entire structure supports the president who is in office, the president of the Law Society of Kenya. And I think when people want assistance from the president of the Law Society of Kenya, it's because of that institution and the support structures of that institution. Of course, as an individual lawyer, any individual lawyer can take up a case. And normally when individual lawyers take up cases, they'll probably enter into a legal services agreement with the client. And if the lawyer is involved in criminal law, they may go to the police station, they may go to the CID, etc. So there is a distinction. When somebody is seeking the assistance, you could call it pro bono assistance of the Law Society of Kenya, or when they're seeking the assistance of any practicing lawyer.
Which was what I was going to ask, because there was a lot of furore over your response here,
Yes.
Which is that this is an issue of public interest. And we have seen the person you are succeeding, but indeed not just Faith Odhiambo alone, but several lawyers, many of whom are not necessarily in leadership at the Law Society of Kenya, who are taking on these cases and fighting for them. Did you understand the feedback that you got? That was very strong, that you were saying, okay, you know what, go to the DCI and report, rather than you seeming to want to take up this case, not necessarily as president-elect.
First, I think it's important to get the big context. Many Kenyans will face challenges of violations of rule of law. There may be abductions. There may be, in some cases, other kinds of violations. And I think it's important that Kenyans are educated on the process you follow when you have those violations. So let's first get the big picture. The first thing you always do is you report to the police, whether it is a local police station, whether it is a OCPD, the Officer Commanding Police Division, and where you need a substantial level of investigations, you report to the DCI. This is very important for a number of factors. One, you set a record that a crime is suspected of having been committed. Secondly, you then trigger what is called the duty to protect of the police and command responsibility so that investigations can take place. The police are actually recognized in the Constitution of Kenya as having a constitutional role. Secondly, because we also know that sometimes members of the police service are perpetrators. Normally, it's not the entire institution, but some of them may be perpetrators. If there is serious danger to life or health, you also need to publicize very aggressively with the traditional media like Citizen TV, with social media, with alternative media, and this is what even the police would tell you. If there is danger to the life of someone, publicize aggressively. And then if you find a challenge in those first two steps, or if they are not adequate, you then also engage human rights organizations and individuals, defenders. This include organizations like Kenya National Commission of Human Rights, which is a constitutional commission with that role. You have private human rights organizations, non-governmental, like Kenya Human Rights Commission, the non-governmental one, Amnesty International, even the Law Society of Kenya. So those are the steps that you follow in doing this thing. So it's educating Kenyans on what needs to be done in this situation.
Allow me to come in here, because that has already been done. I think perhaps what people were saying on X is being tone deaf, rather than saying all the procedure you've mentioned is well and good. Perhaps people were looking to you as the incoming president to say, I'm going to take up this matter.
Yeah, I think I guided, and if you looked at the series of tweets, I guided them that LSK has a leadership in place. And LSK works effectively when you use the structures that are in office.
So right now you're not able to comment on that matter because
it's not a question of comment. It's a question of assistance. I think what they needed was assistance. And they didn't need my personal assistance. They needed assistance of the Law Society of Kenya. And LSK is available and ready to assist. And I did provide guidance on how to get LSK to assist. Unfortunately, I take office only on 27th of March. Before that, we have another leadership in place. It doesn't mean that leadership can't assist. In fact, that is the leadership of Madam Faith Odhiambo that has been very helpful to Kenyans on Gen Z protests and so on. So it's basically telling them that is a leadership that is in office and is able to very competently assist.
All right. I want to talk about the elephant in the room within the profession. It turns out, Senior Counsel, that the legal profession is perhaps not as perfect as has been sometimes projected. Do you anticipate now, as president-elect, that sexual harassment can actually be a problem in the profession?
Of course it is a problem in the profession, not just in the legal profession, in other professions and all over the country. Sexual harassment, like any other criminal offense, will occur occasionally, and we need to take action against it. So I think the challenge that we've had in the legal profession is that we've not been very focused on dealing with this particular issue until it has become very big and gotten out of hand.
What do you think is the prevalence of this? Because we saw protests recently where, pupil advocates and, in internships are complaining of sexual harassment in the big law firms, sometimes allegedly by members of the senior council, of which you now are. What's the prevalence of this?
Okay, so first of all, let me say senior counsel are only about 100 in the legal profession. But you're talking about senior lawyers, which includes all lawyers maybe above 15 years. And we have the mid-bar, which is maybe from 5 to 15 years. The particular case that triggered this protest was actually an accusation against a young lawyer by other young lawyers. So sexual harassment can depend or can arise in any situation. And it has to do with power dynamics in the workplace, misuse of power dynamics. Based on the campaign and going around the country and talking to people, the impression I have is that when you talk to young female lawyers, you'll probably find 1 in 2 or 1 in 3 saying that they have experienced sexual harassment in the workplace. That's a really big statistic. But it's not a statistic that is limited to the legal profession. You'll find it in other workplaces as well. But as the president of the Law Society of Kenya, my focus is first to ensure that the workplace where lawyers are working is a workplace that is safe, it is healthy for them, because for lawyers to champion the rights of other Kenyans, we first need to champion their own rights. Once they are comfortable, they have energy and focus to go and champion the rights of other Kenyans. So that's something I'm very committed to doing.
Yeah, but we're hearing that the internal mechanisms within the LSK are not sufficient towards dealing with this vice. And by the way, we've seen not just directed at female lawyers, but there's also young male lawyers who are complaining of this vice. So what is it about the internal disciplinary mechanisms, for instance, that remains inadequate, that allows this to continue to happen? In addition to even this being a criminal matter, no? Shouldn't this be something that then goes forward to the DCI for investigations and onward prosecution?
Sexual harassment is identified as an offense under the Sexual Offences Act. It's identified as a bad employment practice under the Employment Act. So it's something that should not happen. But you realize that lawyers work in all manner of workplaces. Some of them are in-house. They are working in big organizations, medium-sized organizations, small organizations, the public sector and the private sector. Many of them are working in law firms. Again, it could be large law firms, medium-sized or small law firms. So what is meant to happen is first you need to have good policies and structures at the firm level or the organization level. And that is the first place that you need to build this. You have to sensitize the employers as well as the employees on what are the minimum standards of sexual harassment. For example, LSK has a sexual harassment policy that was passed in 2019. Many lawyers don't even know the contents of it. They don't know how to implement it. So this is something that we need to educate the lawyers. Secondly, beyond the organization level, we have now branches and chapters within the Law Society of Kenya. So that's the second intermediate level where we need to have ability to deal with these complaints if they have not been addressed at the organization level. Finally, at the general law society level, we have the Advocates Complaints Commission, the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal. And these institutions also need to become more efficient, more effective in handling these cases of sexual harassment.
And how would that be?
So for me, I said that there are 3 strategies I'm going to adopt to deal with issues of sexual harassment. The first is to sensitize, educate the senior and mid-bar, so that they put in place effective policies in the organizations, because most of the...
I hear you on that.
I'm coming. Because the first way of dealing sexual harassment is to prevent and not just to wait for them to occur and then to cure. And then I said the second thing is you educate the young lawyers on their rights and also on how to communicate when they have a problem with the kind of harassment that is happening. The third method is now the institutional arrangement. So at the level of the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal, for example, I want it to meet more frequently. It's not meeting often enough. I've already started engaging some of the members of the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal. I want their processes to be efficient so that when cases are filed there, they can be dealt with even within 6 months. I want the processes of Advocates Complaints Commission, which is under the Office of the Attorney General, again, to be fast enough so that within 3 months they have done the investigation. If they're recommending a disciplinary action, they recommend. If they recommend another form of solution, including mediation, they do it. So we have to make these processes efficient. And then, of course, we have to deal with the fact that in one particular case, the one that triggered this whole controversy, the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal said that the sexual harassment issue was a criminal matter to be dealt with by the magistrates' courts. So that is now a kind of like a determination by a tribunal that will hamper the ability of lawyers to deal with the issue. So we need to get this particular decision dealt with on appeal, so that we get the determination of the High Court. And if that determination of the High Court does not reverse it, we may need to amend our rules so that very clearly it is open to everyone who has sexual harassment issue, that if the other levels of engagement and complaint and grievance with securing privacy of the person who's making the complaint and also right to fair hearing or fair administrative action for the accused person, if they don't succeed, you can go to the Advocates Disciplinary Tribunal.
All right, I want us to take a break here with Charles Kanjama, who is the president-elect of the Law Society of Kenya. There is much to talk about, including matters of national interest, contemporary national issues that are taking place in the country. We invite you to send in your questions, comments on X. Please send us a tweet. Sorry, I'm old school. Send us a tweet on Twitter at Citizen TV Kenya, at Yvonne Okwara. Please use the hashtag Citizen Explainer and also send us a text message. The number is 22422. We'll be back with the LSK President-elect in just a moment.